Hey, good people. Welcome to the Evolving Education Project podcast, hosted by me, Dr. Tiffany M. Neachai, and friends, where we center the educational joys, passions, interests, and inquiries of people of color. This episode is part 3 of our Talkin' That Talk, Loving Black Language and Linguistic Justice series, which is inspired by Dr. April Baker Bell's recent book, Linguistic Justice, Black Language, Literacy, Identity, and Pedagogy. For this episode, we showcase a person who practices what we've been preaching throughout this entire series, a person who enacts these ideals in the everyday of schools and communities. And that person is no other than Detroit-based educator and instructional coach, Ms. Silver Moore, founder of Classroom Clapback. As she puts it, Clapback, a comeback powered with attitude, returning fire with way more fire than was said. But this isn't an ordinary clapback. This is a classroom clapback. This is a clapback of the exclusionary practices that have left students of color out. And with that, Classroom Clapback offers custom social justice humanities lesson planning, unit planning, and project planning for classroom educators and homeschoolers. But let's talk about Miss Silver Moore herself, though, okay? Miss Silver Moore is a justice seeker, Black radical activist, and a Black hip-hop feminist of faith. She is a proud native speaker of Ebonics and the product of the Detroit public school system and a Detroit charter school network. Specifically, her work, with an E, as an educator is rooted in the belief that Black child genius is alive and well, Black children are inherently valuable, the liberation of their minds, bodies, and spirits is a necessity, not an adjunct to their education, and the liberation of Black lives globally is predicated on the educational excellence of our youth. It is these beliefs, along with her intersecting identities, that compel Ms. Moore to produce educational content that celebrates Black youth. I'm so excited to have Dr. Asia D. Reynolds join me again as co-host for this episode. Y'all, let's get into this conversation. See, the Lord told me not to put on red today because you got the red, sis. You got the red.
Somebody was gonna have it.
I popped in there.
Yes. So you are just one of the treats of our series on Talking That Talk, Black Language and Linguistic Justice. And we really wanted to have you come in. We interviewed April already, but just to talk about like how you do this on the ground. Like you on the ground, girl. You in schools, okay? You in school, you working with teachers, and you doing other things through classroom clapback. So you can just, however you want to start us off, just let us know about like how you do that with preserving our Black children, their language, their identities, all of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I am Silver Moore, an Indigenous Detroiter, and I've been an educator in the city for 8 years now. So I started off in a 5th grade classroom, and then from there I've taught grades 5th through 8th. But in my heart of hearts, I am an 8th grade ELA teacher, like period. That's the whole thing right there. In my heart of hearts, 8th grade ELA. I now currently work, however, as an instructional coach, where I work with 9th through 12th grade ELA and social studies teachers. So it's a little shift, but I'm liking it now that it's more than my classroom, my grade level, but an entire school now. And so I also have a small business, Clapback, and Classroom Clapback is my best attempt to clap back at this system of education that does Black babies in ways that they should not, right? Because Black babies deserve better. I hope to be the FUBU of education. It is for us, by us. We are unapologetically Black, creating curriculum that centers Black children, celebrates Black identities, and is grounded on the belief that Black child genius is alive and well, and Black children are inherently valuable, and the things that they receive in school should reflect those as truths. So in not only developing curriculum, but also doing professional development with educators so that we can be the best versions of ourselves for our students. All students, obviously, but definitely for Black students in particular.
I love it. And you got me excited talking about 8th grade because, I was a 7th and 8th grade social studies teacher.
Yes.
So if I was in your school, you would be my instructional coach.
Yes.
You are so silly.
I'm in high school now, and so I love the high school vibe, but middle school is, that's the place right there. It's its own special kind of thing, middle school.
It is.
Middle school,
listen, if you teach middle school, you could teach any grade because, nothing is hard for me. I did 7th and 8th grade for 7 years. You could give me anything. I'm good because they just, they so goofy. You can't take yourself too seriously now. If you're going to be extra serious and extra strict, 7th and 8th grade ain't for you. You.
No, not at all. 7th graders stress me. 5th graders stress me. 5th graders stress me because they were still at that hormonal stage where, I had a boy in class that was just excited about seeing women's legs. He used to get excited about legs. That would just knock him off course for the rest of the class. Come on back, brother. Come on back.
We'll let in.
They growing up, they learning, and it's so interesting. Even the shift that you see from 7th to 8th grade, that shift of it's then they act so cool. It's you was just acting goofy in 7th grade. Now you too cool for my little corny jokes. Okay, Devontae. Okay.
They get to 9th grade and act like they ain't never happened. They ain't never been a 7th or 8th grader.
Right. What was interesting is my last year in the classroom before I transitioned into the instructional coach role, my 8th graders, I had every year since they were 6th grade. So I was able to loop with them their entire middle school career. And just to see, even just pictures looking like the night and day, what you look like as a 6th grader versus 8th grader, so much happens during that time. So that was fun.
Yeah. I'm interested in hearing more about what your background in terms of what has led you to education, and then particularly your calling to this work in this way.
Yeah, so this might sound cliche, but I've always been in this work. I grew up in this work, literally. Mm-hmm. My family has a nonprofit. It's called SDM2 Project Education. And me and my sisters are it's actually the namesake of it. Both of our initials are SDM. So in this nonprofit, SDM2, we are focused on building our communities by strengthening our youth. And so we've been doing that through promoting literacy in the community. It started out, honestly, as when I was learning to read, I was a struggling reader. So what my dad did was he went out and bought books for everyone in my class. And that was a seed that he sowed into other students. And, now I'm an instructional coach for ELA teachers. And so from that, we began to do back to school events. We would give out, book bags and school supplies and computers and printers. And then we moved to doing tutoring services and having mentorship programs. So that is that's been over 20 years, which is a nice chunk of my short-lived life. So all I really know is building our youth, promoting education, and figuring out how we can be a part, not just for your kids at your house, right? They all are kids. Yes. So actually this morning, I just saw my mom, she's doing food deliveries in the neighborhood and communities, drop off and stuff like that. So this has been my life, all my life. The classroom is just an extension of what I've always known to do.
I love that. First of all, you did them bought everybody to class. He's we're gonna get y'all all right.
Yeah, and that's what it has to be. And so that where I'm at right now doing this interview, this is my home, but my home is also used as a community center. So we purchase property in the city of Detroit. So students come here. Many a times they get off the bus from school. They come straight here. They use the computers in the space. They get tutoring in the space. They are able to print in this space. We feed them in this space, all right here in the community. It has to be. I believe that, in charter world and school closing, schooling isn't as communal as it once was. So we are trying to create that space for community as best we can be. There's a narrative about Detroit that is not the full truth. And my community just we've set up overnight camping in the space that we have provided. So they're able to pitch their tents and stay out as we created what we call affectionately Moore Park. that we created right here on 7 Mile in Detroit. So it's making sure that education is not just what happens in the school from 8 to 3. It is like a community thing, and how we galvanize the community to support our youth.
That's why we had to have you on the Evolving Education Project, because we are really trying to disrupt how we define education and where education happens.
Yes.
And you embody all of that, what we're trying to do. I'm so glad you're here because, you know, I always talk about how education for me growing up has happened in so many other places besides schools, where I was affirmed. And I appreciate how you're creating these other educational sanctuaries, I would even say, because they're feeling love. They're with people who really care about them. And you're also providing them access to resources so that they can do what they need to do, which we know even in school sometimes don't provide us with, or even just to have access. I remember working in schools and everything was so much bureaucracy, even for kids sometimes, not all the time, but like just to print out paper for my students to go and do a project. I done spend all this month getting them all ready for this big project. They done type their papers. Now we gotta fight for the computer lab. Now we gotta fight for the paper to print the things, so that we can do the activity, so we can have the, you know. And I think I think that's a lot. I think that the fact that they can come to your home as another space and just move freely to use resources so that they can show their genius is just beautiful.
It's an honor to be able to do this work. Yeah.
Tiff, I love how you said sanctuary, and particularly because I feel like from talking to Dr. Baker Bell, I mean, part of what she was saying about what brought her to not only literacy but Black language in particular, of like this being spiritual work. And so I'm wondering, for you, Silver, like, how do you see your work within this line of like really speaking to and feeding not only just the minds and emotionally young Black children, but like spiritually, like feeding them?
Yeah, so Dr. Bettina Love talks a lot about the way in which spirit murder takes place for Black students in our classroom, and the way in which that is replicated. And I don't think it's even always recognizable sometimes with teachers, because it's so ingrained in what school looks like, that it is that constant practice of how students' identities, if you are not affirming them, and then actually you are like, you're murdering them, right? By not celebrating them. So it's not even that I'm saying something bad about your identity, but when I'm not praising it, when I am not celebrating it, when it is not central, it is as if that there is something inherently negative and bad about who I am. So any classroom that has Miss Moore's name attached to it, right? Like you walk into Miss Moore's room, and from the very thing when you look at the place, even that, I think that even the aesthetics of the room, like, is important that the room feels like home. So we have futons in our rooms, and we might have a standing desk here. We might have these small areas here. You got that? You want to sit over here? You want the beanbag? You got this? I have, there's artwork around the room. So you might have, I got my red, black, and green faithful flag somewhere in the room. It's there. Whether there's a Sada Shakur on the wall, or whether we got like all of these people are going to be in the space. So when you come in here, you feel like, oh, this is a place that they like people that look like me. Right? The quotes that are going to be on the wall, I'm going to draw in window paint, on the windows, just quotes affirming you. It's going to feel like a space that loves people like you. And then most importantly, I always had, know in this space, you are loved, right? Like, that's the banner in the classroom. You are loved. And so how do we set up these places that say that this is a place you are protected in? And that comes in, what are we going to learn about today? So I'm not going to necessarily follow the rules and the curriculum. If you are giving me something, you say, hey, teach this, but this not affirming my babies. So the things that we are going to do for whatever 45 minutes to an hour, however long the class is, I'm going to affirm you by letting you take up the vocal capital in this room. You are not going to just sit here and hear me talk the whole time. That is a part murder when we call kids to be silent and say that is good behavior. That is what scholars do. They're able to sit silently and be on task and be in slant. No, So how are we making sure that they are talking, and not just to me, that they're talking to each other? How are we respecting the fact that, like, children are full humans, right? So all of that comes with humanness. That comes with having your high days, your low days, your emotions. I'm off here. I'm strong here. I'm good at this. I'm not as good at this. I'm nervous about this, right? And like recognizing through humanity of our students. And that is something that in particular Black students are not allowed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And we are not allowed to be fully human in that space. And this is nothing new. I think this is how the system of education has been set up historically, right? Like for people of color not to affirm their humanity, and it is essentially a place that we try to teach you how to code switch. We try to teach you how to assimilate. We try to teach you how to subscribe to white supremacist characteristics as much as we possibly can. So are there ideas of perfectionism, like all of these different aspects of white supremacy culture, how do we replicate them in the classroom? And that's what school looks like. So it's important for me in any classroom that I attach myself to, whether it is my classroom, particularly a classroom I'm coaching, that we are deconstructing these aspects that seek to murder the spirits of Black students.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I said some of it made sense.
No, it made a lot of sense. And I love what you talked about their humanity, especially I keep going back to the middle school level, because I always would notice, like, as a classroom teacher, how they would go from like being cute, especially my Black boys, like go from like being like cute, or the Black girls too, going from like, okay, they're rambunctious. And then, something about when they turn to 7th, 8th grade, I would actually see teachers like be fearful when I would be walking my 20-something tall Black boys, because my school was separated by gender, through the hallway. I would see like fear over them. I'm just like, they're kids, and it really made me sad. And so I guess I can ask you about that, but I want to say one other thing. I love what you said about the classroom and aesthetics. I miss that so much about the class, being a classroom teacher. That's what I miss the most, because you can't do that as a professor. You don't get to. They don't let you have no classroom, do the stuff on the wall, and everybody come to your class. And then you can have pictures and quotes and they work hanging up. We don't get to do none of that, Silver.
And it's interesting because I feel like
you're virtual right now, so you have that's the space where you can kind of get around. This is everybody on the computer,
right?
Yeah, makes up.
But it's interesting too. I've seen. I don't know if y'all saw these conversations where people were having a conversation about classroom aesthetics being like overly stimulating for children, and I just wanted to know, like, who said that and where that came from, right? In terms of like, because I'm like, I just remember, like, I think going into a classroom that is bare to me is actually very depressing.
Yeah, and I've heard that a lot as well, particularly like for students that might have ADHD, that they're saying that they have too much stuff going on, that it could be a lot, and I can understand that to a degree. I guess it depends on what it looks like. So my aesthetics is, I actually had that classroom I said that I looped with for 3 years. I had tons of pictures of them that I had taken over the years. So I had a selfie wall that was all pictures of themselves throughout those 3 years. So that would be in your face versus like not necessarily an anchor chart that has 25 bullet points on it that you're so I think it depends on and then as well as your students as well too. Like you're not creating a room just so that you like to look at it. That it's for them, and that is going to nurture them, and that is going to make them feel comfortable and happy. So if it is something that is not comforting to your students, then no, that is not no abolitionist social justice thing right there. Just because you're like, I'm creating a really pretty space, but if it's not a place that they are comfortable in, then no, you need to scratch that period. So I think it also will be taken into account. Who are my students? Is how does whatever the space I am creating affirm my students or celebrate my students as the baseline?
And I think that all of these regulations and all of this, especially as teachers of color or Black teachers, where we have to like show that we're really like prove that we're really teaching and all of this type of stuff, it takes away from the joy of decorating your classroom, because now you got to show, you got to prove that you're teaching. So you got all of this like not even, anchor charts and not that you shouldn't have any. That is, we are pedagogues. That's good. Teaching. But I do think like I saw, like, I remember when I went to school in the 90s, teachers did more of like what we're talking about, where you would have all of the teachers didn't do it, but some teachers did it, where you would have a couple of teachers where they would make it look like a home. The classroom looked like a home. You would see their spin on it, and you love those classrooms. I feel like in the early 2000s and stuff, with maybe it was the test prep and all of that, and the state test, it moved to like these very classrooms becoming like very sterile and very like academic. There's stuff up, but it's not aesthetically pretty necessarily. It might be teacher pretty. So what's the difference between like teacher pretty classrooms versus like what you're saying, which is a place where this classroom is a place where kids want to be and it reflects something that they want to see, and not just so that we can prove that we're teaching.
Yeah, I'm going to say, so I have not always been a classroom decorating person. I will say that. The first couple of years, I'm like, this ain't a skill set that I got.
We just surviving, okay? I get it.
That's it. That's it. I don't got it. So it did come to when I started getting really strong with it, that there was a team that came in during classroom decorating days. I have my whole team that's going to come and to help me do this work, because if I have a vision, so Pinterest has been a help on that to create those things. But again, I think it goes back to, it's nothing wrong with saying, I want the theme of my classroom to be butterflies, whatever. There's nothing wrong with saying I want it to be butterflies, but that could be just a pretty classroom. If it is, the home space, like, first of all, if it's going to be a butterflies, what does the butterflies either got to do with they learn it or got to do with your students? If they don't have nothing to do with either one of them, that's great that they got butterflies all over it. That might be really cute, but if it has nothing to do with them or what they are learning, then it doesn't make any sense. So I would see in my classroom, a lot of times the things that we worked on would remain there. They would look probably like art, but it's just because we did lots of gallery walks. So I had stuff all around. And those probably would stay there until they fell off because it was brick walls and tape. So not everything stuck very well. Right. But it becomes a part of your classroom, the learning that they develop. It becomes a part of what is in this space. But again, it's just not pretty for the sake of being pretty. Right. Pretty to the sake of your students coming in here and say, this is a place that my name is all on it, so I can kill it in this space, because this space is about nothing but me. I think that's the difference.
I think this is so important, because we're really getting into, like, I think me and Tiff always talks about how, like, people confuse pedagogy and curriculum. Right, like, people are like, oh, we read Black people in class, right? But like, don't really understand like these other parts of the pedagogy that is important to affirming young people's knowledge in themselves. And so I'm even wondering, so Tiff is from a literacy background, I am not. So I'm wondering pedagogically, like, what it looks like in your classroom, particularly like how you're engaging and integrating Black language, or leaving room and space for Black language to exist in that space as someone who's doing literacy with young people.
Yeah, so I will say, I tell people all the time that think that, like, I'm doing the work because they had a book and it was a Black character in it, so I've done it. I'm like, no, that is not enough to make you woke, because a lot of times what I'm seeing is that teachers, I call it teaching in blackface. Ooh. So you think that somehow this is now culturally relevant, this is social justice pedagogy, this is abolitionist pedagogy, but nope, you're just teaching in blackface. You're sprinkling on a little things, but the way in which you teach it is still very white supremacist in nature. Just because it's a Black person in there does not mean that you have done the work. But in terms of language, so me, I don't code switch very well, and I don't do it on purpose. Yeah. Right? Like, so I allow myself to be that model in my classroom. First of all, that proverbial be like, I don't know how you turn that off in the first place. That's going to come out at any point in time. That's going to come out, and I'm not going to try and stop it because I'm in a classroom, right? Like, so I think that is the first way in which you celebrate it, by not being a teacher and say, I'm going to deny who I am, but yet believe that this is going to be a space where you feel able to celebrate who you are, right? So, I mean, I've done units where we talked about the importance of names and identity. We did a whole unit about names. And so I remember the name of the poet, but it was a poem about little black girls with big names. And so we watched this poem, and then my students after this was like, my student Diana, she was talking about having an Anna name after that, and how she felt by hearing people celebrate that Anna name, right? And like just affirming that. But that comes from, I love when I get my class roster and I see them names, I'm like, yes, I love me a good quote unquote ghetto black name. I just love me one. Right? But sometimes we get that and we look like, oh shoot, what this child name is. We see on social media that they make the jokes about our kids' names, right? And like we're going on that road. So if you don't see that name and that doesn't make you smile, like, yes, this name is she black on purpose. Her mama and her daddy didn't say, I want to hide her blackness, I want to hide his blackness. I'm putting it right on the birth certificate, right? That should be something that makes you celebrate. You look at that and be happy. So if you don't have that at the starting line, if you don't approach it like that, like, not I'm just having a black person in this book because this is what they say is best practices for black students. No, you say because black people are magic and black lives truly do matter, and we say they matter, it's not mean they just shouldn't be murdered by police. That's one of the reasons way we show that black lives matter. But if black lives matter, then that means that they should be their joy matters, right? Their smile matters, their laughter matters, their genius matters, their creativity matters. And so if you are not able to have that in the front of your mind at all times, I don't care what curriculum you think you about to use. I don't care what best practices you know. I don't care how much you know about teaching literacy. I don't care how much you know about phonics. It doesn't matter. Right? Like when you come into that classroom, you will perpetuate that spirit murder of black children, and you will think you being woke at the same time. And unfortunately, I feel like that happens way too often. Black teachers, we have to be very careful with making sure that we don't think we are automatically doing the work just by virtue of us being black in the space.
That's right.
That is not enough.
You better say
we should also be seeking to learn and unlearn, and then learn some more and then unlearn some more, because we are still walking through this world. And so we have been touched by the anti-blackness of this world at some point in time. And so you can't walk in and think that, nah, not me, because I'm the black teacher. So there's no way anything I'm doing in my classroom is anti-black.
Right.
Like, we have to humble yourself, learn and unlearn, or you will be doing the exact same things despite how woke you think your curriculum is.
We need to pass around the offering plate to that, because that's the whole message. That's the whole message.
Y'all done got me started.
Wait, what you say?
I said y'all done got me started.
We want to keep it going, because yes, but I'm thinking about everything that you're saying, and I love your background of your educational background of being a classroom teacher, and now you're an instructional coach where you're working with other teachers, right? So how and I think we've all done that work. Everybody in this space consults, and we've worked with other teachers, and I know that when you teach from these convictions that you shared, how is that? How is that when you're working with other teachers who some share, or some may be on the journey towards, or some may outright resist when you're trying to? So how can you help us, those of us who are teacher educators, those of us who are other instructional coaches, those of us who do professional development and consult around these precepts that you done preach to us? What would you say about all that? What would you offer us?
So, yeah, I've been in positions where, and I'm trying to be as politically correct as I can, but I don't know if they will hear this after the fact. Right? But I've definitely been in positions where I've had to deal with, like, ooh, this ain't a Miss Moore classroom in the slightest, and that there is. One is also like having a certain level of grace, because I wasn't a Miss Moore classroom like now was not what a Miss Moore classroom looked like day one, right? Like, I had to do some learning and unlearning. So understanding that and recognizing that to help with grace, but still be committed to push because it's for the babies, right? Like, so I might be frustrated having to have this conversation with you, but I'm going to have this conversation anyway because you got my babies in your classroom. They might know my name, but then my babies that you got in your classroom, so I'm holding to it. The other thing that I've been trying to do is like this right now, this conversation right now, the Classroom Clapback Summit we had a couple weeks ago. I need those things to offset the things that might happen in my professional life that are a little less feeding, right? In the times in which I feel like personally, like that my spirit is getting a little slightly murdered and beat up on. Because there are those moments where it is taxing to fight and you be tired. Right? See, I didn't really, like, I caught it after the fact that the B came out. It's just gonna come out, and then that's it. Like, you be tired. Like, so you be tired. And there's it's teacher tired, but there's also an admin and all that kind of stuff that's tired as well. Because for me, I feel like it's even more draining because I'm working with the adults that have all the students. So that is another level of like, ooh. So what keeps me is I got to keep coming back to the things that are going to feed me and keep holding on to that and get my fuel up and now go back. And then carry that. That's what will keep me going like another day. And then realizing that like, I don't know it all either. And being in a position that I am still remaining teachable, that I am still learning, that even the teacher that might like, whoo, they got something. They got something I can learn, like even on the most woo teacher. And how do we work together? I think that is going to be, that's important. It's not just like, I'm not here to fix the teacher and tell the teacher what it's like. How do we build coalition? I hate that in a lot of times when schools you have like this admin versus teacher thing. And it can't be that way for the sake of the baby. How do we build coalition around this work? And just being vulnerable and showing teachers who I am. This is who I am and this is what I believe. And so, like, hey, even if I'm pushing, I promise it ain't got nothing to do with me got an issue with you. I'm just pushing because of these babies. This is what my heart is. And just kind of being really truthful about where my heart is. Not only for them, but reminder to me of where my heart is for them days where I'm like, I'm just, I'm over. Like, you got to remind yourself where your heart is sometimes to keep you from what might seem like a fight continuously. Remind yourself where your heart is.
Yeah, I was going to ask you around like, how do you engage, I guess, self-care and building community in such a space? Because even as I'm entering this topic, it's like, we know this whole idea about Black language and a conversation with ELL, like, right? Like, I mean, a very, like, education itself is anti-Black, but like, to really think about how we don't, we still can get in debate, hardcore debates about African American vernacular any day, right? Like that people still don't even want to recognize it, even as a dialect, let alone a language. So I'm just wondering how you navigate and can take up space and take care of yourself in such a space that this is just like this don't exist.
One thing I have tried to do, and I haven't always done it well, but I've tried this. I'm like, you cannot allow yourself to be made a mammy when it comes to school, and that's something with Black, like, you can allow yourself to be made mammy, and it's okay to be like, I'm not about to fight at this particular time, like, because I can't. I think it's okay to say, it's not even a matter to talk about picking and choosing your battles. Like, sometimes it might just be, I'm tired and I cannot fight this one, and I'm not going to fight this one, right? And like, being able to do that. And I know we are trained to, even if you're not an educator, if you live in this life as a Black woman, you are trained to be this strong Black woman. You are constantly fighting being made mammy to fix the problems for everybody and do it all with a smile on your face. And to get beat up here, left, upside down, back, and still smile. And you definitely fall into that when it comes to being a Black woman educator of Black students, because you got to be everybody's coach, everybody's mama. You gotta, you gotta know all of the data. You gotta know all of this for everybody. Like the bridge called my back. It's like the whole narrative of being an educator.
Yeah.
And so just telling yourself like, Silver, you just not. And so I miss the classroom like every single day, right? Like every single day. But the moment I chose to left because my second year teaching, I got diagnosed with MS. And so that meant a whole lot of days that was not the easiest, right? Like I taught from a chair because I'm like, Silver, you're not really walking today, so you're going to sit down and teach this lesson. Right. And so after I had one full year, I think I spent like 3 weeks in the hospital trying to got back together, but still ended up being out. The next year, I'm like, I don't want to leave yet. I'm not trying to leave. So I moved to part-time teaching, but that also meant part-time money, but still full-time bills. So I'm like, okay, it's not sustainable. So I left because after a point, I'm like, I absolutely love what I do and absolutely love my kids, but I love to walk. Right, like I love to be healthy, and I had to make the choice. Like I can't kill myself in it, and so I made that choice. And at least now I moved, so I can still impact other classrooms. I wasn't walking away from education. I would never do that, but I had to not allow myself to be made mammy, not allow myself to stick with this strong Black woman thing, and say like, okay, what can I do? Because I have to be able to live in order to fight another day anyway. And just holding on to that, like, no. Do not allow your back to be bridged. Do not allow yourself to be mammies in the classroom for an administration, a school district, a superintendent, or whoever. Just no is a full sentence in and of itself. It doesn't need any explanation. And just sometimes you just got to say no.
That is for real.
About you cannot allow yourself to be made a mammy. Because I think that's what happens a lot, as Black women teachers. If you're a Black woman in a school, period, that's what happens a lot because people just expect so much of you. They come to you when they need something. Even when some of these teachers have their own personal problems, they become to you. It's like, I'm here to be teaching the kids. I'm not here to be helping you solve your problems. And I think I've seen some teachers like be honored by that, but it's not, like, oh, good, they like me. I'm hoping you're saving the day, but you're not at the end of the day. You have to take care of yourself. And I love the way this is a great story to share about how you chose yourself in that moment to say, I have to take care of me. I have to make sure that I'm well. And how do we do this work? But you're still so powerful and strong because what I hear in teacher conversations, which it's hard for me to navigate as a person who researches schools and wants to hold teachers accountable, is a tension between teachers who are caring for themselves in the ways that you say, like you are still holding yourself accountable to Black families, to Black children, to the teachers and all that, but also caring for yourself versus the ones who, I don't hear you. I don't hear your mouth fighting for nothing until something's with your contract or something with your teacher union rights, which I'm not saying you shouldn't be fighting for the teacher union. Not that we shouldn't be getting, educators should be getting it, but I don't never hear you come hard for these Black children at all. You don't care about nothing that goes on with them until it's something that affects your paycheck and so I always, struggle. You're helping me to learn how to navigate that in the sense of like caring for yourself and making sure that you're caring for yourself, but you still also actually care about the kids versus you only care for yourself. You only care about, and it's not wrong to care about your contract and stuff, but when that's all you care about, that's when I have a problem. And that's what I have a problem with navigating that aspect of it. And also, and I also appreciate how you talk about, which I think you push us to, how do we sustain ourselves in this work, right? Because you found ways to sustain yourself. And I think because we don't support teachers of color, Black teachers in particular, in sustaining, that's why we leave. And that's why we don't come back. And so I appreciated how you offer like sustainability, how you created other spaces that could feed your soul, how you have communities and you have work that you're doing outside of the day-to-day in schools, even though that's important to you too, to feed your soul. So I know I said a whole bunch of stuff, but Asia been coming with the question, so I want to get all of my thoughts out before Asia come with a really, really good question. My thoughts be gone. So however you want to talk to all of that I share, it's fine.
Yeah, so just in remembering like Ubuntu, right? Like I am because you are. And so there isn't a disconnect. I don't think true self-care, I don't think is disconnected with community care.
Yeah.
And that like we are all each other's business. I know we got and like keep your business at the house, it stays here, like that. No, I think like we are all each other's business. So my self-care cannot be in opposition from community care, and it's not community care if it is in opposition of the care that an individual needs. And like that's where you tee that line of like, is this, you know, your self-care one to be like, but I'm not really thinking about nobody else. Well, that's not the kind of that's still the white supremacist framework. That's that individualism that comes with white supremacy. Like, I'm getting mine. I really don't care about just because I need to, like, there is an aspect of self-care that should be a community thing. And that doesn't mean always like, I can't do this because the community needs me. No, it is like the community is figuring out how do I pour into you as well, right? That means that like your friend group, your circle, your tribe should always be like, sis got an issue right now. How do we jump in and take care of her? We know she's not going to ask for the help. So what do we need to do when we know she's not going to ask for the help, right? And not seeing those two separate things, but that are intrinsically connected, right? Like they have to be hand in hand for this to be something that is able to be sustained. Because when you need to take 5 minutes, because you ain't okay, you need somebody that's gonna jump in on those 5 minutes for you. So if you got self-care, you all by yourself, literally, then something is going to fall. You gotta have somebody that can come in. So we talk about those two things as if they are separate, but they have to be connected. And if they are not connected, especially as an educator, students, particularly Black students, are going to fall every single time if we are not finding the way to make sure that self-care and that community care are go hand in hand.
I mean, this is so important. I feel like I really felt like the more that I tap into my own humanity and caring for myself, like that filters into your teaching, and it filters in the way that you do things and connect with other people when you start taking better care of yourself. And so I feel like we always make the hard work seem like that's a side gig rather than that is the gig, right? Like that is the gig. But I wanted to also just hear more about these transformational moments, right? Because like Tiff and I both come in from as educators, and now we're teacher educators, right? And we know this ain't what the curriculum look like, right? Within teacher education program, this ain't what PD look like, right? And so I'm interested in hearing like, what is that transformational moment for you of like, I'm going to unlearn some stuff. And then what are the things that you engaged in to relearn? Like, what were the books that you felt like you need to read, or spaces you felt like you needed to be in this transition?
Yeah. So I always say when people ask me books to read, I talked about it before, Dr. Bettina, like read everything. All Bettina got, read everything. If she on the panel, listen to the panel, listen to this, like all things, everything. But for me, what I anchored down as was 2 moments. So first, the summer before I started teaching was the summer that the non-indictment came through for George Zimmerman for the murder of Trayvon Martin. Right, so a child. And that was just months before I entered into the classroom. Then that next summer, my second year of teaching, right after summer PD, I grabbed my stuff, loaded up on a trip, and we went down to Ferguson, Missouri, for the Black Lives Matter ride. This is before the Darren Wilson non-indictment came out. But so we spent that whole weekend there, marching and protesting. And so I go back to the moment, like I'm standing in a place where he died, right? Like his mother is there. I'm looking at his mother's face. We are buying we're buying milk in case we are tear gassed. We're writing the number to the legal advocate on our own. We are doing on our arm. We're doing all of this on the weekend. And then Tuesday, I go back into the classroom, right? So my first year teaching, I'm like, I was first year teacher. First year teachers, you're only so good. You're only so okay.
You are trash. You are just trying to get by. You are just like,
okay, you don't know nothing from me.
Right. No, you don't even know how to write lesson plans. You like, I spent all this time in school.
Nothing. So I felt like I was grasping at straws my first year, and then I was really having moments. I'm like, girl, you are fueling the school to prison pipeline. This is what I'm freaking out to myself. I'm like, this isn't the work. I don't know what the work is or how to do the work, but I know what I'm doing right now is not it.
That's right.
And I'm like, I need to figure it out. So to go from being in Ferguson to teaching 2 days later, there was no option that I needed to figure out what this work looked like. There was no option. I promised myself that I would always be a teacher for Trayvon. I promised myself that I would always turn up and not turn down and to do this for Mike Brown, right? Because these are children, these are students. Mike Brown did what he was supposed to do, right? Like, he did what they tell you that you're supposed to do. Graduate high school, be able to go into college. He did all of those things that people say that you are supposed to do. So for me, I believe, teach the standards. They need to be able to know how to do all of that. They need to be able to kill any academic thing you put in front of them. They need to kill it. My students also need to go in there with this critical consciousness that is necessary, that they're going to make sure that they can shift some things in every institution that they leave my classroom and enter into, and be able to do this. Like, how can I shake this up from Black lives? Right? Not just that, like, I got a degree, I'm a lawyer now. That's great. But I'm not about to create the next Ben Carson. That ain't about to come out of a Miss Moore classroom. Okay. Ben Carson, he did what he was supposed to do. He mastered all of those Common Core standards. His teachers helped him get there. But I'm not going to create the person that's going to be successful, but able to think like that and perpetuate those things for Black lives. So in part of getting that, doing the work, my transformational moment is knowing, like, it's not enough to say I'm teaching the standards. It's necessary. It is necessary, right? Like, they need to be able to go in there and know what the papers say, dissect up any argument. They need to be able to do that. But they also need to go in there and shift some systems, because our people are dying having done the work, right? Did what they told them to do. So how do we get into those places and shift things? So I wanted to be able to create students or equip my students to shift things. And so after there's a lot of protests going on, like after the non-indictment came through for Darren Wilson, and I was out protesting, and the Monday came, Miss Moore, I saw you out there, and somebody said, hands up, don't you? I saw you. Right, there have been multiple times where I saw you. And that is important for me to know, like, I'm not just going to fight for y'all in this room. I'm fighting for you on the pavement. If I'm going to lay down and block this traffic, I'm going to lay down and I'm block this traffic for my baby. And so that is where we need not just teachers, not just educators, but activist educators, where those two come in, because the Common Core ain't enough. It is part of the academic standards. All of that is part of it, but it is not it. And so those are the things that sustain me. You will be a teacher for Trayvon Silver. You will turn up, but you will not turn down. You will do this for Mike Brown. And always, of course, I am doing this by Ayanna Stanley Jones, who is a Detroit baby, a Detroit child who was born and should still be here, who didn't get to see her middle school. I'm doing this for them. I'm doing this to break the systems that oppress Black people. That's why I do this work. And so that's going to come out in my lesson plans. And I'm going to have to work, they can teach you a couple of things. That's the hope. Because they teach me stuff all the time.
So can you tell us about Classroom Clapback? Because you done already preached the word. And we know what you stand for. We know what you believe in. And how education think in and out of schools, in any spaces of education space for Miss Moore, okay? All right. But so tell us, how did you come up with Classroom Clap? I just break down the name. Like how is you bold enough just to be like Classroom Clapback, and that's gonna be the name of the thing, and that's what we're gonna be doing? It's a verb and a noun. Okay, Classroom Clapback. Tell us about that and then all of that.
Yeah, so I actually, after I said I had the 3-week hospital stint, I knew like some things gonna change. I'm like, all right, how you gonna pay your bills? Because you're going part-time and the bill's not slowing down. And that's when I'm like, let me go. I had thought about it. Like, I was always the nerd teacher that I really, really liked lesson planning. I know a lot of teachers hate it, but that was my favorite part of the job is lesson planning. I would easily spend, and there are times where I'm like, oh, that's real dope. I would make a good lesson plan. Let me go and write it. Like, that's what all it was. I loved it.
I love it.
So I'm like, all right, let me try and do this and slang some lesson plans, and that's what my thinking, like, I have to be able to do this. And so Angie Thomas wrote and released The Hate You Give around that same time, read that book, and I'm like, oh, I'm about to make a whole curriculum inspired by this book. And that's what I did. And so it was towards the end of the school year. This is a time that, projects and stuff. So while students were doing their project-based learning, I'm at my desk on a computer cranking out a curriculum. And I think I did this whole thing within a matter of a couple of months to release it, to get that out. And I'm like, I wanted to create something for the teacher that I was my first year. I wanted to do that work, but did not know what to do or where to start. There aren't even a lot of resources even to teach. So not even like I don't know how to teach it, but if I do know, what's the lesson plan? What are they doing? So I wanted to create that for the teacher that I was my first year, that really, really wanted to do the work, had the mindset to do the work, had the heart to do the work, just didn't know how. So I created this and to clap back at this system, and Auntie Maxine Waters taught us the importance of a good clap back. And so you know what? Let's clap back. Let's clap back at these zero tolerance policies. Let's clap back at Eurocentric curriculum. Let's clap back at the school to prison pipeline, right? Let's clap back at this fear and murder. And we can do that in starters for the lesson plan. And now it's moving like, how can I create more spaces for professional development? Because that's the site. People's like, why don't you try to get this in the big, school districts? I'm like, I'm a little worried because I don't know the hand, at least if we selling it, small like that, if the teacher's looking for it, they already got some level of something versus like, hey, all teachers, this is what you're teaching because it's 2020 and now everybody is trying to be culturally relevant. So here you go, teach it and then do some real damage on top of that. So now this is me like creating those spaces that you can do this learning, unlearning, get this professional development that is necessary. I don't know why it's not bigger in teacher education programs. I don't know why schools don't spend more time with it in their year-long piece. I really don't know. But I feel like the conversations we're having right now should be held at every school. All the time, like regularly. So I want to be able to create that space. And just be able to do the work that I was doing already in my classroom with other people, and to be able to share that out the best way I can, and it was like to pay my bills, So it was work, but also was hungry because I was working part-time, so I had to figure something out.
Yes, that's real. That is real. Well, we appreciate you so much, Silver. I don't know unless Dr. Reynolds had another question because she's been coming with the heavy hitters. Are you good? Or did you have anything else? Oh, okay. This has been such a joy. You just brought so much joy to my heart because I think this is going to help so many teachers are looking to hear from a teacher like you that they're feeling, when I teach education classes, I always get a couple that's like you, and they be like, what do I do? And I'm just like, yeah, that's part of why I wanted to do this podcast, and hopefully it'll come into other things to connect them to people like you, to resources like you. Like if what Miss Silvermore is saying to you resonates with you, like, go look up her Classroom Clapback. Look up April Baker Bell's book. All of these things in this series, because we want to have a place where teachers can even just be connected to resources that are like, this is what I wanted. I wanted a classroom curriculum when I was a teacher. That would have been very helpful to me. Maybe I would still be in the classroom. I don't know. If I had, because we trying to, I want Black teachers to stay in the classroom. I know it's hard because you got to care for yourself when they killing your spirit so much, but we losing so many teachers of color. First of all, we don't have that many to start out with. Then we get in and we just, our spirits being killed. We trying to fight for our babies, fight for ourselves, and all of this type of stuff. And so I just appreciate you so much and what you're doing. And I hope that this will bring, people will connect with you, and just teachers who need this will just find it. Now, you can't say we ain't connect with people at the Evolving Education Project. Now, go on and find it and be great.
No, definitely. Like it was just really, truly an honor and humble to be able to, like, we talk about this stuff theoretically, but I'm always excited to see what this looks like in practice. And it's just beautiful to see what has come of this. And definitely with me being in Detroit, we're going to have to figure out when things are safer to come out to the center and see what we can do for you and have you in the class. Because I think it's, that's the thing. We come across, like Tiff was saying, I come across students in my class that are hungry. Like, they know something's wrong. They know, they're like you, right? They're standing in that moment of like, something's wrong, but I also don't know my way out. And so they really need to hear from folks like you that are like, yes, not only are you right that things are wrong, but I can also show you a way out. And so that is definitely the inspirational piece of all of this, and what more students need to hear and see, and then see this and hear this from a Black woman where I feel like Black women have contributed to literally the architecture of public schooling in the U.S., yet never get that recognition, right? So it's extremely important, and we thank you for being here with us.
No, thank you so much for having me. Listen, I am completely honored and humbled. Anytime somebody want to hear what I got to say, I'm like, you want to hear from me? So I appreciate it so much. This was fun for me today. So this was, I like stuff like this. So I was excited. This was fun for me. So thank you. We in the pandemic, we quarantined. It ain't really much to do for fun, but this right here was a fun thing. So thank you for having me. I truly appreciate it. And keep doing all of what y'all doing, especially with connecting. That the only reason I'm even here is not just because Dr. April Baker Bell told you about me, but she was the first person to see a proposal I did and said, like, hey, you can come and see. She was the first one that did it for me. And then when I did a conference, she was like, yep, I'm gonna be there and I'm gonna speak. So I appreciate like how Black women, we have to have that community care from one another. I appreciate y'all having me here today.
Yes, well, you enjoy your day. We ain't gonna take up no more of your time. The only thing Thank you for listening to part 3 of our Talking That Talk, Loving Black Language and Linguistic Justice series. We thoroughly enjoyed this rich conversation with Ms. Silvermore. We loved learning about how she sustains the language and identities of Black students, how she affirms Black students, and how she loves Black students every day in schools and in communities. Please be sure to support Ms. Moore by checking out Classroom Clapback today, especially if you are looking for lesson plans, unit plans, and curriculum that centers Black students. We hope that you've enjoyed our first series on Black language. We did it, y'all. We did it. Let's see who gets that reference. Okay, so get ready for our next series, which will be coming out soon. To find out more about the Evolving Education Project, to write in, or to join our listserv, check us out at evolvingeducationproject.com. And please subscribe to this podcast and follow us on social media. We hope to cultivate an authentic audience and community. We want you to help us to evolve over time and to shape what this could be. Now that you know what we're about, let us know what you want to learn more about, authors that you would like us to interview, discussions you would like to have. Okay, that's all for now, good people. We out. EvolvingEducationProject.com